The text came through at 9:15 p.m. on a Monday. Dad, we're reading tomorrow. 2 p.m. Parker and Associates downtown. Don't come. I stared at my phone in my small apartment in Portland's Pearl District. Uncle John had died 3 weeks ago. I'd known there would be a will reading eventually. I hadn't expected to be uninvited. Me, why not? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Dad, it's for real family. People who actually cared about John. You visited him twice in 10 years. Don't embarrass yourself. My hands were shaking. I set down my phone and walked to my window looking out at the rainy Portland street below. Twice in 10 years. That's what they thought. My phone buzzed again. Dad, your brother and sister will be there. Your mother. Your aunts and uncles. People who were actually present in John's life. You don't belong there. I picked up my phone with steady hands and typed one word. Me, okay. Then I set an alarm for 12:30 p.m. and went to bed. I'd been lying to my family for 8 years. Not about anything dramatic. Not about a secret life or hidden identity. Just about where I spent my Sunday afternoons. Working, I'd tell them when they called. Double shift. Catching up on charts. Hospital meeting. My family never questioned it. Why would they? I was a physician assistant in the ER at Providence, Portland. Healthcare workers always worked weird hours. Always had meetings. Always had charts to catch up on. But the truth was different. Every Sunday for 8 years from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., I drove to Uncle John's house in Selwood. We'd have lunch together. Watch whatever game was on. Work in his garden. Talk about everything and nothing. Uncle John was my father's older brother. 68 when he died. Never married. No kids. Retired electrician who'd spent 40 years working for the city. He lived in the same house he'd bought in 1985. A small craftsman bungalow with a front porch and a garden that took up most of his yard. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, flowers. He spent hours out there every week. When I was 26 and had just finished PA school, drowning in debt and working exhausting shifts, I'd stopped by his house one Sunday to drop off something my mother had sent. A birthday card maybe. Something obligatory. Uncle John had invited me in. Made me lunch. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, simple and perfect. We'd ended up talking for 4 hours. You should come back next week, he'd said. If you want. I make a mean pot roast. I came back. And kept coming back. Every Sunday. For 8 years. We'd cook together. He taught me his recipes. Pot roast, chili verde, albondigas soup. Everything his mother had taught him. We'd work in the garden. He taught me about tomatoes, about soil pH, about when to plant and when to harvest. We'd watch whatever was on TV. Blazers games, Timbers games, cooking shows, documentaries. Didn't matter. The company mattered. And we'd talk. About his life. About mine. About his years as an electrician. About my patients. About books and politics and family and regrets and dreams. He became my best friend. Why don't you tell your family you come here? He'd asked once, maybe 2 years in. Because they'll make it weird, I'd said. They'll ask why I'm spending so much time with you. They'll think I want something. Or they'll feel guilty and start visiting out of obligation, and then you'll have to pretend to enjoy visits from people who don't actually want to be here. Uncle John had nodded. You're probably right. Your father calls me every few months. Asks how I'm doing. Tells me I should sell the house and move into a retirement community. He means well, but it's not the same as being here. No, it's not. So we kept it our secret. My family thought I was working on Sundays. Uncle John's neighbors knew me, knew I came every week, but they'd never met my family, so there was no one to accidentally mention it. For 8 years I showed up. Rain or shine. Through the Portland winters and the hot summers. Through my own relationship dramas and career stresses. Through Uncle John's health scares and his good days and bad days. I missed exactly 4 Sundays in 8 years. 2 for a vacation to Hawaii. 1 when I had the flu so bad I couldn't drive. 1 when Uncle John himself was in the hospital and told me not to come because visiting hours didn't align with our usual time. My family visited him maybe 6 times in those 8 years. Obligatory holiday visits. Christmas dinner a few times. Thanksgiving once. Always as a group, always briefly, always with the air of checking off a box. 3 weeks ago, Uncle John had a massive stroke. I was at work when I got the call from the hospital. They'd listed me as his emergency contact 2 years earlier, though my family didn't know that. I'd rushed to Providence St. Vincent, still in my scrubs. Found him unconscious in the ICU. The neurologist told me the damage was extensive. He wouldn't recover. I'd called my father from the ICU waiting room. Uncle John had a stroke, I'd said. It's bad. How bad? Life support bad. The doctors say he won't wake up. Silence. Then, Jesus. We'll come down tomorrow. He's at St. Vincent's. ICU third floor. Got it. Thanks for calling, Sophia. They'd come the next day. Dad, Mom, my older brother Marcus, my younger sister Elena. They'd stood around his bed for 15 minutes, looking uncomfortable. Mom cried quietly. Elena took a photo of the monitors, which felt weird, but I didn't comment. The doctors say there's no hope? Dad had asked. No. The brain damage is too extensive. So we need to make decisions. About life support. Yes. Who's the medical power of attorney? I'd pulled out the document Uncle John had signed 2 years ago. I am. Dad's eyebrows had shot up. You? Why you? He asked me to be. A couple years ago. Why didn't we know about this? I don't know, Dad. Maybe ask Uncle John. I gestured to the unconscious man on the bed, immediately felt guilty for the sarcasm. This seems irregular, Dad had said. It's legal. The hospital confirmed it. They'd left after 30 minutes. I'd stayed for 8 hours. Left only to work my shift, came back after. Did that for 3 days until Uncle John passed quietly, with me holding his hand. The funeral was small. Family only. Uncle John had specified that in his will. No big production, just immediate family at the graveside. We'd stood in the rain at Riverview Cemetery. The priest said generic words about eternal rest. My family cried appropriately. I stood silently, too hollowed out to cry in front of them. Afterward, at my parents' house in Lake Oswego, the family had gathered. Sandwiches and coffee and quiet conversation. Did John have much? Uncle Robert had asked. Robert was Dad's younger brother, a real estate agent in Beaverton. What? Dad replied. Money. Assets. That house in Selwood has to be worth $600K at least. Plus his pension savings. I don't know, Dad said. His lawyer called. Said there's a will reading next week. Who's the executor? His attorney. Some guy named William Parker. My Aunt Linda had chimed in. John lived simply. He probably left it all to you, David. You're the closest family. Maybe, Dad had said. We'll see. No one asked me anything. No one mentioned that I'd been listed as medical power of attorney. No one seemed curious about why. I'd left early, claiming a shift at the hospital. That was 2 weeks ago. Now at 12:30 p.m. on Tuesday my alarm went off. I got dressed in my one good suit, charcoal gray, worn for job interviews and the rare court appearance for patient cases. I drove downtown to the address Dad had texted. Parker and Associates occupied the 10th floor of a building near Pioneer Courthouse Square. Marble lobby, mahogany doors, the kind of place that screamed expensive legal services. I checked in with the receptionist at 1:50 p.m. Sophia Martinez for the John Martinez estate reading. She checked her computer. Yes, Ms. Martinez. Conference room B. Down the hall, last door on the left. You're a few minutes early. That's fine. I walked down the hallway, my heart pounding. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe I didn't belong here. Uncle John had left everything to his brothers as was proper. I was just a niece. The medical power of attorney thing was probably just convenience because I was in healthcare and could understand the medical terminology. I reached conference room B. Took a deep breath. Opened the door. Dad was already there, sitting at a large table with Mom. Marcus and Elena sat across from them. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda. A few cousins I barely knew. And at the head of the table, a man in his 60s with white hair and a kind face. He looked up when I entered. Dad saw me and his face flushed red. What are you doing here? Attending the will reading, I said quietly. I told you not to come. This is for family. I am family. You know what I mean. People who were actually in John's life. You visited him twice in 10 years, Sophia. David, the lawyer said calmly. Ms. Martinez is named in the will. She's required to attend. Dad's expression shifted from anger to confusion. Named in the will? For what? A token amount. Please everyone take a seat, the lawyer said. I'm William Parker, John's estate attorney. We'll begin in just a moment. I sat in the only empty chair at the far end of the table from my family. Elena was staring at me. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Mom was whispering something to Dad. Mr. Parker arranged papers in front of him. First, let me express my condolences. John was a wonderful man. I had the privilege of knowing him for over 15 years. Dad nodded. Thank you. Before we begin, Mr. Parker continued, I need to clarify a few things. This will was executed 2 years ago in September of 2022. John was of completely sound mind as documented by his physician. The will was witnessed by 2 unrelated parties and notarized. It is legally binding and irrevocable. Of course, Dad said. John also left specific instructions that I was to read the entire will without interruption, then answer questions afterward. I ask that everyone respect that request. We all nodded. Mr. Parker opened the document. The last will and testament of John Anthony Martinez, executed September 15, 2022. He read through the legal preliminaries. Sound mind. Superseding previous wills. Executor designation. Then he reached the bequest. To my brother David Martinez I leave the sum of $10,000. Silence. Dad's face went pale. To my brother Robert Martinez I leave the sum of $10,000. Uncle Robert's mouth opened slightly. To my sister-in-law Patricia Martinez, wife of David, I leave the sum of $5,000. Mom gripped Dad's hand. To my niece Elena Martinez, I leave the sum of $5,000. Elena made a small sound. To my nephew Marcus Martinez, I leave the sum of $5,000. Marcus was staring at the table. The entirety of my remaining estate, Mr. Parker continued, his voice steady, including my residence at 4156 Southeast Spokane Street, all bank accounts, investment accounts, retirement accounts, personal property, and any other assets not specifically mentioned above, I leave to my niece, Sophia Elena Martinez. The room exploded. What? Dad half stood from his chair. That's impossible. Uncle Robert shouted. Elena burst into tears. Mr. Parker raised his hand. Please. Let me finish. The estate has been valued at approximately $2.8 million, he continued calmly. This includes the Selwood residence valued at $650,000, investment and retirement accounts totaling $1.9 million, savings and checking accounts of $200,000, and personal property including a 2018 Toyota Tacoma and household items valued at approximately $50,000. $2.8 million, Dad said. His voice was hollow. To Sophia. Yes. This is fraud, Uncle Robert said immediately. She manipulated him. She's in healthcare, she had access. Mr. Martinez, Mr. Parker interrupted firmly. I must warn you that accusations like that without evidence could expose you to serious legal liability. But she barely knew him. Dad turned to me. You visited him twice. Maybe 3 times. Actually, Mr. Parker said, that's not accurate. Which brings me to the letter John left to be read at this time. He pulled out an envelope. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip them together in my lap. Mr. Parker opened the letter and began reading in Uncle John's voice. Practical, warm, direct. To my family. I know this decision will confuse and anger some of you. So I'm going to explain it clearly. For the last 8 years, Sophia has come to my house every single Sunday. From 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. She never missed except for 4 Sundays. 2 when she was on vacation in Hawaii, 1 when she had the flu, and 1 when I was in the hospital. She came in the rain. She came in the heat. She came when she was exhausted from working 12-hour ER shifts. He came when she had her own problems. He came because she wanted to. We'd have lunch together. She learned all my recipes. We'd work in the garden. Those tomatoes you all complimented at Christmas dinner? Sophia planted and tended most of them. We'd watch games together. The Blazers, the Timbers, whatever was on. We'd talk. Really talk. About everything. My childhood in Santa Fe, which none of you ever asked about. Her patients and the challenges of emergency medicine. Politics, books, cooking, life, death, regrets, dreams. She knew me. She knew me. David, you're my brother and I love you. But you called me every 3 or 4 months. You asked how I was doing, but you didn't wait for a real answer. You told me I should sell my house and move into a retirement community, even though I told you I loved my house. You visited maybe once a year for a holiday dinner where you stayed 2 hours and left. Robert, same. Except you called less often and your visits were shorter. To all of you, I don't fault you for living your lives. You had careers, families, responsibilities. I understand. But Sophia made time. 4 hours every week. That's 208 hours per year. Over 8 years, that's 1,664 hours. Almost 70 full days of her life. She did this while working 50 to 60-hour weeks in the ER. While paying off student loans. While building her career. While having her own life to live. She did it because she loved me. Not because she expected anything. Because she saw me as a person worth spending time with. When I was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation 3 years ago, Sophia took me to every cardiology appointment. He helped me understand my medications. She made sure I was taking them correctly. She called me every morning to check that I'd taken my blood thinner. When I had a cancer scare 2 years ago, she held my hand through the biopsy. Sat with me while we waited for results. Celebrated with me when it came back benign. None of you knew about any of this. Because you didn't ask. You didn't know I had AFib. You didn't know about the cancer scare. You didn't know Sophia came every Sunday. You didn't know because you weren't paying attention. Sophia asked me once why I didn't tell you all that she visited. I told her you'd either feel guilty and start visiting out of obligation, which I didn't want, or you'd be weird about it and accuse her of wanting my money. Looks like I was right about that second part. Here's the thing. Sophia didn't know about my money. Not specifically. She knew I owned my house. She knew I had a pension. But we never discussed my investments or savings. I made sure of that. When I asked her to be my medical power of attorney 2 years ago, she tried to refuse. Said it should be David as my closest living relative. I insisted. I wanted someone who would actually understand what the doctors said and make decisions based on what I wanted, not what was convenient. He did that perfectly. When I had the stroke, she stayed with me. The nurses told me later, well, they told my lawyer since I was unconscious, that Sophia spent almost 72 straight hours at the hospital, leaving only for her work shifts. He held my hand. She talked to me even though I couldn't respond. She advocated for my comfort. David, you visited for 30 minutes. You asked about legal paperwork and who would make decisions. Then you left. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you so you understand. Sophia earned this inheritance through 8 years of showing up. Through 1,664 hours of choosing to spend time with me. Through caring about me as a person, not as an obligation or a future source of money. The monetary breakdown is this. At 1,664 hours over 8 years, I'm leaving Sophia approximately $1,683 per hour of companionship. That seems fair to me. David and Robert, your $10,000 each works out to about $200 per visit over 8 years. Also fair. Everyone else, your $5,000 amounts are token acknowledgments that you are family and I did love you even if you weren't present. If you're angry about this, ask yourself, when was the last time you spent 4 hours with me? When was the last time you asked about my life and actually listened to the answer? When was the last time you showed up without being asked? Sophia did that every week for 8 years. That matters. That's what I'm rewarding. I hope you'll learn from this. That presence matters. That showing up matters. That seeing people as people, not as items on a to-do list, matters. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. Either way, Sophia has earned every penny. With love and absolutely no regrets, John Anthony Martinez. Mr. Parker set down the letter. The silence was absolute. I was crying. I couldn't help it. Uncle John had known. Of course he'd known. He'd planned all of this, documented everything, anticipated every objection. Every Sunday? Mom whispered. For 8 years. I nodded, unable to speak. You told us you were working, Dad said. His voice was strange. Hollow. I lied. Why? Because Uncle John asked me to. Because he didn't want you visiting out of guilt. Because he wanted our time together to be genuine, not obligatory. You should have told us, Elena said. He was crying too. Would it have changed anything? I asked. Would you have started visiting? Silence. We could have. Elena insisted. But you didn't, I said quietly. For 8 years you didn't. And Uncle John was okay with that. He just wanted someone who actually wanted to be there. Uncle Robert stood abruptly. This is manipulation. Clear manipulation. We're contesting this. That is your right, Mr. Parker said. However, I should inform you that John anticipated this. I have extensive documentation. Building security records from his senior community center where he volunteered. Sophia drove him there every week and signed in as his companion. Medical records showing Sophia attended every doctor's appointment. Testimony from neighbors who saw Sophia's car at John's house every Sunday for years. Phone records showing daily morning calls from Sophia to John to check on his medications. He pulled out a folder at least 2 inches thick. John documented everything. He wanted to ensure there could be no successful contest. Any attempt will be expensive and, in my professional opinion, will fail. How expensive? Dad asked quietly. Legal fees for a contest typically run $25,000 to $50,000. And if you lose, which you will, the judge may order you to pay Sophia's legal fees as well. You'd be looking at potentially $75,000 to $100,000 in total costs. Uncle Robert sat back down, his face red. This is unbelievable, Marcus said. He was looking at me. You really visited him every week? Yes. And we didn't know? No. Because he asked you not to tell us? Yes. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. Jesus. We really were that oblivious. You were busy with your own lives, I said. I don't fault you for that. But don't be angry with me for spending time with him. $2.8 million, Dad said. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the table. He had $2.8 million. Yes, Mr. Parker confirmed. And he left almost all of it to Sophia. Yes. Minus the specific bequests to you and your family, which total $45,000. Because she visited him on Sundays. Because she was present in his life, Mr. Parker corrected gently. There's a difference. Dad stood up. I need air. He walked out. Mom followed. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda exchanged glances and left too. My cousins filed out quietly. Elena hesitated at the door. I don't know whether to be mad at you or proud of you, she said. You can be both, I replied. She left. Marcus stayed. I'm not going to contest it, he said. For what it's worth. Okay. I'm shocked. And yeah, part of me is jealous. $2.8 million it's life-changing money. I know. But you earned it. He shook his head. Every Sunday for 8 years. I can't even commit to going to the gym twice a week. You showed up for Uncle John every single week. I wanted to. That's what makes it real. He stood up. I hope Dad comes around. He's hurt right now. Feeling guilty probably. That's why he's angry. I know. Give him time. Marcus left. I was alone with Mr. Parker. How are you doing? He asked kindly. I don't know. Overwhelmed. That's understandable. For what it's worth, John was very certain about this. He spent months planning the will. He wanted to ensure you'd be taken care of. I didn't visit him for money. He knew that. That's exactly why you're getting it. I wiped my eyes. What happens now? The estate will go through probate. 4 to 6 months, typically. I'll handle that as executor. The specific bequests to your family will be distributed within 30 days. Once probate clears, you'll receive the house and all accounts. And if they contest? I'll handle that too. I'm confident we'll prevail. The evidence is overwhelming. I nodded. Okay. John also left something else for you. Mr. Parker pulled out a small envelope. He asked me to give this to you privately. I took it with shaking hands. My name in Uncle John's handwriting. Take your time, Mr. Parker said. I'll be in my office when you're ready. He left. I sat in the empty conference room and opened the envelope. Dear Sophia. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. I would have liked more Sundays together. By now you know about the inheritance. You probably tried to refuse it or at least felt guilty about accepting it. Don't. He gave me 8 years of Sundays. You gave me companionship, laughter, purpose. You made my retirement years some of the best of my life. I lived simply because I was saving this money for something that mattered. Turns out what mattered was you. Use it wisely. Use it joyfully. Use it to build a life that makes you happy. Pay off your student loans. Buy a house with a garden where you can use everything I taught you. Travel. Take risks. Live fully. Don't let your family's reaction make you feel guilty. You earned this through presence and love. That's the most valuable currency there is. Thank you for every Sunday. Thank you for every conversation. Thank you for seeing me as a person, not as an old man marking time. You made my life better. I hope this money makes yours better too. With all my love, Uncle John. The Tacoma is yours too. I know you've been driving that beat-up Civic for years. The truck is paid off, well-maintained, and has a great sound system for singing along to whatever bad music you kids listen to these days. Asterisk. I sat in that conference room and sobbed. The next 3 weeks were brutal. My phone blew up with messages from extended family. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years demanding I do the right thing and split the inheritance. Aunt Linda called me a manipulator. Uncle Robert threatened legal action daily. Dad didn't speak to me at all. Mom called once. How could you keep this secret for 8 years? She asked. Uncle John asked me too. You should have told us. We could have visited too. Would you have? Really? Silence. I'm not giving back the money, Mom. I'm not asking you to. I'm trying to understand. What's to understand? I loved Uncle John. I spent time with him. He appreciated it. That's all. It feels like a betrayal, she said quietly. Of who? Of us. Your family. I didn't betray anyone. I just showed up for someone who needed me to. She hung up. True to his word, Marcus didn't contest. Elena called 2 weeks after the reading, crying. I should have visited him more. I should have cared more. He loved you anyway, I told her. He just loved differently based on how present people were. Will you share any of it? With me and Marcus. Elena. I'm not demanding. I'm asking. As your sister. I'll think about it. Okay. 4 weeks after the will reading, Uncle Robert filed a contest. Grounds. Undue influence, isolation of the deceased, taking advantage of his vulnerability as an elderly person. Mr. Parker called me. Don't worry. We expected this. Do you have evidence of your relationship with John? Photos, texts, anything. I spent the weekend gathering 8 years of documentation. Hundreds of photos of Sunday afternoons. Thousands of text messages. On my way. See you soon. Thanks for lunch, that pot roast was perfect. Blazers game tonight? Garden looks great. Evidence of a real relationship. Of consistent presence. Of love. The court hearing was scheduled for 5 months later. In the meantime, I received the $45,000 in token bequests to distribute to my family. I wrote the checks personally. Delivered them to Dad's house. He opened the door, took the checks and closed it without a word. 5 months after the will reading, we sat in Multnomah County Circuit Court. Judge Sarah Chin presided. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an air of someone who had no patience for nonsense. Uncle Robert's attorney, a man named Patrick Hughes, presented their case. That I'd isolated Uncle John from his family. That I'd manipulated a vulnerable elderly man. That as a medical professional, I had unfair advantage in understanding his health conditions and could have influenced his decisions. He had no actual evidence. Just speculation and implications. Then Mr. Parker presented ours. Documentation from Uncle John's volunteer center showing I'd signed in as his companion every Wednesday evening for 5 years. I'd driven him to his volunteering at the community meal program. Phone records showing I'd called him every single morning for 3 years to remind him about his blood thinner medication. Medical records showing I'd attended every doctor's appointment for the last 4 years. Testimony from his cardiologist. Sophia was at every appointment. She took notes. She asked questions. She made sure John understood his treatment. She was the most involved family member I've ever seen, and I was surprised to learn the rest of the family considered themselves close to John. Testimony from Uncle John's neighbors. Mrs. Chin from next door. Sophia's car was there every Sunday like clockwork. She'd help John with his garden. Sometimes I'd see them on the porch just talking and laughing. The rest of the family? I saw them at Christmas sometimes. Maybe. Building records from Uncle John's medical buildings showing my signature on visitor logs for hundreds of appointments. Photos spanning 8 years. Uncle John and me in the garden. Cooking together. At Blazers games. At the Timbers Stadium. At Powell's bookstore. Living life together. Text messages. Thousands of them. Daily check-ins. Plans for Sunday. Shared jokes. Real conversations. And Uncle John's letter, explaining everything in his own words. Judge Chin reviewed it all silently. Then she looked at Uncle Robert. Mr. Martinez, I've practiced law for 28 years. I've seen legitimate cases of elder abuse and manipulation. This is not one of them. Uncle Robert's attorney started to object, but Judge Chin held up her hand. Your brother left a clear, documented explanation of his decision. He was evaluated by multiple physicians and found completely competent. The evidence shows an 8-year pattern of consistent care and companionship from Ms. Sophia Martinez. He turned to me. Ms. Martinez, the evidence shows you provided extraordinary care to your uncle. You did so while working full-time in a demanding profession. You did so without expectation of inheritance. The documentation shows your uncle never discussed his financial situation with you. Back to Uncle Robert. If you wanted to inherit, you should have been present in his life. Your brother made his wishes clear. He valued presence over blood relation. That was his right. She banged her gavel. Contest denied. John Martinez's will stands as written. Furthermore, given the complete lack of evidence supporting this contest, I'm awarding Ms. Sophia Martinez her legal fees, to be paid by the contesting party. Mr. Martinez, you'll also pay court costs. Mr. Parker leaned over. That's $32,000 they owe you. Uncle Robert stood up and walked out without looking at anyone. Outside the courthouse, Dad was waiting. He'd attended the hearing but hadn't sat with Uncle Robert's side of the room. Just in the back, observing. Sophia, he said. Dad. I'm not going to apologize, he said. I'm still processing all this. Still angry, honestly. Okay. But I wanted you to know. I'm not contesting. And I convinced your mother not to either. Thank you. That letter John wrote. Dad's voice cracked slightly. The part about me asking how he was but not waiting for an answer. That was true. I did that. Every time. I said nothing. I thought I was being a good brother. Checking in. Staying in touch. But I wasn't really present, was I? You did what you could with the time you had, I said quietly. No. I did the minimum. You did what you could. There's a difference. We stood in silence. I'd like to try, Dad said. To be more present. With you at least. If you'll let me. I'd like that. 6 months after Uncle John's death, the estate cleared probate. I inherited everything. The house in Selwood. The investment accounts. The savings. The $2.8 million. I sat on Uncle John's front porch. My front porch now, on a Sunday afternoon drinking coffee and looking at the garden. The tomatoes were coming in. I'd planted them myself this year, using everything Uncle John had taught me. The soil was perfect, the spacing correct, the varieties he'd recommended. I thought about what to do with it all. The money. The house. The future. I called Mr. Parker first. I want to set up a scholarship fund. 4 PA students from low-income backgrounds. $50,000 a year. Your uncle would love that. And I want to donate to the American Heart Association. For AFib research. $100,000 in Uncle John's name. Wonderful. I made more decisions over the following weeks. I kept the house and moved in. From my small Pearl District apartment to Uncle John's craftsman bungalow with the big garden and the memories of Sunday afternoons. I paid off my $180,000 in student loans. Every penny. The weight that lifted when I made that final payment was indescribable. I invested most of the rest conservatively. Enough to know I'd be financially secure for life. I kept working at Providence, Portland. Same shifts. But now without the constant financial stress. No more skipping meals to save money. No more putting off car repairs or doctor's appointments. And every Sunday I kept Uncle John's tradition. I cooked his recipes. Worked in the garden. Watched whatever game was on. Sometimes Dad came over. We were rebuilding something slowly. It wasn't what I'd had with Uncle John, but it was real. We'd cook together, work in the garden, talk about things that actually mattered. Mom came sometimes too. Elena started visiting occasionally. Marcus when he could. We were learning slowly what presence looked like. The scholarship fund helped its first student that year. a 26-year-old single mom working through PA school. She sent me a thank you note with a photo of her in her white coat on her first day of clinical rotations. Uncle John would have loved that. I thought about his letter often. About using the money wisely, joyfully, to build a life that made me happy. I was trying. I'd traveled to New Mexico to see where Uncle John grew up, visited the places he'd told me about in our Sunday conversations. I'd started dating someone I met at the hospital who didn't care about my money and appreciated that I could grow heirloom tomatoes. I was building a life. 1 year after the inheritance, Elena stopped by on a Sunday with coffee. We sat on the porch in silence for a while. "I'm sorry," Elena said finally, "for how I reacted. For being angry instead of being proud of you. It's okay. It's not. You did something really special. You showed up for Uncle John for 8 years. That's incredible. And I was angry because I felt guilty that I didn't do the same. You were living your life," I said. "I know. But I could have made time. I should have made time." We sat quietly. "The money," Elena said. "I'm not asking for any. I just want you to know. I'm glad he left it to you. You earned it. Thank you. I mean it. And I'm going to try to be better. To be more present. For you, for Mom and Dad, for the people who matter." "That's all Uncle John wanted," I said. "For people to learn to show up." 2 years after Uncle John's death, I sat on the porch on a Sunday afternoon. The tomatoes were perfect this year. The peppers were coming in strong. The herbs were thriving. Every plant a lesson he'd taught me. Every row a Sunday afternoon spent together. I thought about what he'd written in his letter. About using the inheritance to build a life that made me happy. I was doing that. Every day. The money had changed my life. Eliminated debt. Provided security. Opened possibilities. But the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the 8 years of Sundays. The lessons about showing up. The knowledge that presence matters more than anything. Uncle John had taught me that. And every Sunday afternoon sitting on this porch working in this garden, I honored that lesson. I showed up. I was present. I lived fully. That was the real inheritance. The 2.8 million was just proof.